Meeting room, call to order the Norton Charter Commission. All members are present besides Laura Parker. Is anybody recording besides Shane? Just stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seeing that there is nobody in the public that would like to comment, we'll move on. So part of our interview, I'd like to call Mr. Kimball up. He'd be so gracious to attend. Please.
Maybe sit next to this guy, huh? Evening.
Well,
Mr. Kimball, I appreciate you coming. I know you've had a long history of giving back to this town, volunteering. I don't even dare to begin to name off the amount of committees or things you've been elected to, but I'm sure you can help us out as we go through. We usually have a set standard questions that we ask either by elected officials or by appointments of committees. With you, obviously, we're going to have numerous questions, and I'm sure you're going to have some input for us. You have years of experience, and so please feel free to expand on your knowledge.
Okay.
So can you just introduce yourself to the committee and just kind of tell us what the history of, what your role in Norton's been?
Robert Kimball, Bob, 51 Pine Street. Selectman for 24 years. I was on the Finance Committee prior to that for about 4.5. I've been involved in many committees and boards over the years, a lot of ad hocs. Capital Improvement, 24 years. Presently I serve on the Gold Star Committee as chairman. I serve in the Town Common Revitalization Committee with Keith as chair, and I also serve presently on the Cemetery Commission. Been on many ad hocs over the years, open space and planning and recreation and many different things along the way, but been involved, actually been involved since the inception of the original charter. I was involved in that with the Finance Committee, so I'm probably one of the only ones in the room that was around, other than this guy, actually involved in that process way back when. It's pretty much easier then. It was a boilerplate type of program, and they just kind of put it in front of you and said, this is what other towns have done, and you modified a word here and there and pretty much adopted it. Today, obviously, there's more to it than there was back then, so that's me.
All right. So some of these, like the boards and commissions, for instance, like the Town Common Revitalization and the Cemetery Commission, can you just explain a little bit of those and what your role is?
Sure. Yeah, well, my first position I was put on was the Gold Star Committee, which was the committee that actually built the Trent Memorial next to the CVS on West Main Street. Board of Selectmen created a committee in about October, and with the help of the Highway Department, we had that facility up and running by the following Memorial Day weekend. So we actually did it in 9 months. We built that facility through donations mostly. Very little town cash was used to build it. Since then, the committee has been, there's 4 of us. We're missing one. We have been missing one for a number of years. It's a committee of 5. We've been taking care of it, maintaining it, paying a professional to landscape it. And we also jump in there as need to clean up and do what we have to do ourselves. The Town Common is a newer committee formed by the selectmen about 2 years ago, charged again to reconstruct the old Town Common and keep it in its natural state as possible, to keep it historical and true to what it's supposed to be. So that process is, I'd say, about 95% complete. The Highway Department, Keith's guys have done a terrific job of helping us as a community save a ton of money. If it wasn't for them, we'd be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I can assure you that what we spend is not nearly as much as it would have been or could have been if we had been using prevailing wages and all the other mandates that the state makes us do. So it's project's still in works. I'm very proud of it. We have our first Welcome to Norton sign, which is what actually started the whole process. we were told by a lady that she had gone from town to town to town, and I guess it was a little field trip, trying to find out how many communities in the Commonwealth didn't have a welcome sign, and Norton was one of 6 that did not have a welcome sign. So that's what actually started the process. When we found that out, we said, okay, we're going to do something. So we came up with the forming a committee made up of 7 of us, and it's done. We've done very well, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished so far. We put in some trees and shrubs last week, which were donated by Wheaton College, by the way. And a lot of the stuff that is there, was donated either through monetarily or through waiver. And again, the Highway Department, 70% of it was through their work and effort. That common fence was originally installed by Mrs. Wheaton herself back in 1865. So that thing's been there quite a while, and surprisingly, it wasn't it was in bad shape, but it wasn't that bad. We had no molds. We had to go out and buy new molds and get everything put back together again. But it's coming along, looking good. We put in a well. We put in an artesian well. We put in a sprinkler system. So everything is now up and running perfectly. The other committee I'm on, I'm a member of the Cemetery Commission. That's a new position for me about 2 years ago. It occurred to me that we had bought the land on Newland Street and we hadn't gone through the process of putting in new rules and regulations which hadn't been adopted since, the 80s? It was like written on the back of a napkin, a bag, and these are the rules. And we kind of took that and said, okay, we've got to go somewhere with this. So we actually went to a company that does this type of stuff. I met them at the Mass Municipal Association a couple of years ago, and we had them come in and give us a template that we used as guidance. We built from that, and then had town council review it, and that was just recently adopted at the town meeting. So it's now in place. So now the Newland Street Cemetery is officially open, and I believe there's a number of graves in there already. There's probably about a dozen graves there so far, and it's going to handle our needs for about 147 years. So we're pretty happy that's now up and running. And again, it was done on the shoestring, and again, the Highway Department stepped in to make sure that all happened. So that's the basic overview of the three committees I'm involved with.
Can you just also give a little bit of history of your involvement as a selectman in the years and service?
What do you want to know?
Just give us a brief explanation of, when you got elected and how long you served, just so we have it for the...
Sure. I was elected. Well, I'll go back to the Finance Committee first. I was building a house on Pine Street, and had lived in town for by that time I'd been here for about 7 years, and ran into some issues here at the town hall. I was trying to build a house, knew nothing about it. I was going to hire other people. I did it all myself. We designed it ourselves. And I got into a scrabble with the building inspector, who basically, from my first interview, said, "You will never build a house there." So, as you've seen me over the years, you probably find that I'm not good at that kind of an explanation. So I started demanding more of an explanation. And eventually I took him to court, and I did win what was rightfully my right to build on this piece of land. That's what got me involved to begin with. I said to myself, I don't like this like you folks. You don't like the way that it's working. Get involved and find out how it works. So I spent, just about 4.5 years on the Finance Committee. I did chair it 1 year. The second year I was a member. And then in 1995, I ran for selectman. It was the time when people would come from other towns to come into our early days of cable access and watch the theatricals that were happening on local TV. It was quite an issue, from people getting up and pushing each other around to all kinds of ridiculous. It was embarrassing to some of us. So I decided to run in '95, and I ran eight consecutive terms after that. So I do believe I'm the longest serving selectman in Norton. Butch Rich came in number 2 at 21 years, and I came in at 24. And I didn't know that until I heard his services when he died, that he was the second longest serving. And I sat there and thought, well, then I've got to be number 1. If he had 21 years, and at the time I had like 20. so 22, 23 years, so.
How would you say overall, as your time as a selectman, did you guys work together?
I was very fortunate to work with some very, very good boards. I mean, we had our differences. You wouldn't know that a lot of times on camera. We always respected each other. We had different points of views. But I think overall, I was very lucky to serve with them. Every person I served with, I had a personal contact with, and I can't think of anyone that I would say I didn't enjoy serving with. I think they were all pretty good, straightforward people, trying to get the job done, trying to do the best we could. And I think we've done a lot for the community in the last 24 years. You can see our fingerprints on a lot of different things that have happened in Norton.
With your time in the selectmen, what are your thoughts on the level of checks and balances within the board?
Within the board itself, I think we were pretty much on top of what was going on and able to answer most questions that would arise. Can't think of any time when, if we did disagree, we would disagree and then move on. But I don't know that there's any. I never had any concerns about anybody's credibility or what purpose they were there for. They were pretty clear about what they were trying to get done. You could say there were people that maybe favored the school side of the budget more so than the town side. But, at the end of it all, we all agreed that we were doing what we thought was best for the town as a whole. I don't think we took our own personal, I can think of a lot of things I voted for that I didn't agree with. But sometimes you have to agree to disagree, and you have to agree to the fact that what's best for the community is the best thing that you have to do. And sometimes you just have to put your own personal agenda aside and go for it. And I found that most of the people I served with were pretty much like that, for the most part.
Obviously, you worked for multiple town managers or worked with a bunch of town managers. What are your thoughts on the guidance you received from them?
I think, originally I worked with administrators way back. And town manager form of government was by far better than obviously than the administrative position, and gave the strong town manager a lot more position to run the day-to-day stuff and keep us selectmen out of the day-to-day as much as they possibly could. I've served with, I'm going to say 4, maybe 5 that we've interviewed and hired over the years, and I would say that every one of them was very good. I can't think of anyone that I would not recommend to do the job. They all have their own different ways of doing it, but their guidance was more probably from us to them, from us to them than them to us. They did help the new selectmen as they came on, to educate them on how things work and that kind of stuff. But you come into this office thinking that you're going to, I'm going to get this done, and then you find out that how government really works. It doesn't work fast. So, but we've had some very qualified managers that have done a great job for the town.
As a selectman and as part of some of these committees, did you have access to everything, for instance, information, technology, the people to do your jobs properly? Yeah,
no doubt about it. I mean, anything I needed, I could get. Sometimes you had to follow procedure. You have to request it through the town manager or someone else. But I find that the town employees are more than apt to get the questions answered for you. They're very good at what they do. They're not always recognized for what they get done, but there's some very good people working for the town. And I've seen some good ones leave over the years because we obviously don't pay as well as other communities, but we've always managed to get good backfill along the way.
With your time as a selectman, have you noted any trends that would potentially impact the town going forward? Any changes?
No, obviously financing has always been a problem. I mean, from day one, we were having override requests back in the 80s. I mean, it's not something that we've never had to address, but I think probably today, my concern the past dozen years probably has been the divide between what I would call municipal and school side of the budgets and how to make that work. We came up with a 70-30 strategy thinking that was going to be a way to fix it all. And it really isn't. There's only so much money you have to pass around, and you have to do it the best you can. But I think overall, I think financing has been the worst. Well, everything is hinged to it. If you want to build a new high school, put an addition on, it costs money. If you want to build a new municipal or community building, it's going to cost some money. Whatever you do is cost money, and you've got to figure out where that money's going to come from. There's only so much in the pot. And as much as you'd like to think that there's, other avenues out there, there really isn't. You have so many dollars to spend, and, it's like giving your kid a $100 bill and say you have to live on that for a week, or give your kid a credit card and say you got to live on that the week. Which way you think they're going to live better? I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the way that the world is today. So you have to be fiscally responsible. And we have people that on checks and balances that keep us that way too. You can only spend money a certain way. Some of the projects we've been working on as far as even the town common, if it wasn't specified in the original article, we couldn't do it. We had to come back and change it a couple of times, so we could do other things and make it work. So the checks and balances are definitely there. We have an accounting firm, Scanlon, out of western part of the state, and they don't let anything go by. I mean, they do audits that, right down to the penny. And they advise the town every year in areas that they should probably look at as far as maybe change this out, or maybe you should adopt this policy or this law. They've been very good for years at doing that. But there's a lot of eyes on everything that happens in this building, for the most part.
As it relates to how our town government operates, what do you think we currently do that we should stop doing?
I think the way it works today is the best we can do with the open town meeting. Obviously, the next step in the process would be to look at an RTM, a representative town meeting. Not sure the town's ready to do that yet, but there is some, that would be the natural transition from where we are to the next step. Do they work? From my experience, they work in the beginning. They don't work after a while. The representative town meeting has the same flaws, the same issues as the open town meeting. You're always going to have special interest groups that are going to get involved one way or the other. I've seen a lot of them come, and I've seen a lot of them go over the years. And I think, if you're looking at what population of 20,000 people, where do you want to go? It would probably be to the RTM. At the same time, the open town meeting could work if we modified some of the ways we do things. The idea of cramming 2,000 people into to a high school is ridiculous, and we've done it. We've been caught off guard. We've had to drag chairs, and we've done to do all kinds of things over the years to make it work. Process should be looked at as maybe we need to look more internally on how we do things before we get to town meeting. We should have programs in place where I've come to finance committee that sat in the back of the room during their open hearings, and I'm the only one in the whole room. That has to change. We've got to start educating people so that know that they can get answers before they have to go to town meeting to get it. And if we could do that, we could maybe modify the amount of people that will show up at town meeting, and some of them will already have their questions answered. One thing I always felt very strongly about, we never put into play, was to have the school committee and the board of selectmen sit together a couple of times before a town meeting and talk about everything on the agenda, so everybody understands exactly where it goes. We did do it one time before I left. We're starting to get it rolling out, but even a public hearing where people are invited to the library, or a bigger forum than this, where they can ask questions and try to get some answers. It might modify the amount of people we're trying to cram into a building. It may not, but that's one option. But the town's getting bigger. Town meetings are getting smaller over the years, so it's a question of where we go from here. Fortunately, I'm not in a position now I have to worry about that. You guys can decide that.
As it relates to how the town government operates, what do you think we currently do that we should keep doing?
I think we have a pretty good way of running the business. I think the budget process is probably the one that we don't do a good job at, and getting people out and educating them on how it works. And that goes to the school side of the process, too. Both sides should be out there, explaining what they're trying to do and what they're trying to get done. As you all know by now, I know you've been to enough of these meetings and listened to enough people, you know that the town side of government is pretty much, when you allocate a dollar amount to police department, that's all they can spend. That's it. They can't spend any more than that. On the school side, you allocate a dollar amount, which is a total dollar amount, and the school committee is able to move within that budget as long as they don't exceed the dollar amount. You can't do that on the municipal side. So they're two different ways of running the business, so to speak. But I think people are suspicious, and I think that's probably something that needs to be worked on. And the only way to get people from not being suspicious is to start talking more about how the process works and where the money comes from and how we're going to spend it. And try to nip some of that before it becomes a problem. Over the years, I think I've seen, they talk about the relationship between the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. And it didn't change for 24 years. It was exactly the same. They have their agenda, we had our agenda, and both agendas were in the best interest of the community of trying to figure out the best way to do things. So I think I've had the utmost respect for every school committee I've worked with, because I know they're doing the best they can possibly do with what they have to work with. And the same applies to the police chief and the fire chief and anyone else, that's working on the town side. There's a lot of finagling sometimes in order to make the process work. So.
On a personal, to answer this question for you personally, we've kind of seen a trend here that people have talked about 3 types of town government, whether it be open town meeting, or we have the RTM, or town council. Do you have any, feelings on, say, I know you mentioned the RTM, but do you have any feelings on the town council?
Yeah, I believe there's 11 communities in the Commonwealth that presently use that form of government. If you go and read their charters, and they're online, Palmer is one. There's a number of Northampton, there's a number of small communities that are even smaller than Norton that have charters. If you follow their process, though, you're still going to have that budget process where people are going to want to come into a room and talk about it. And you can have 2,000 people show up for it. So I don't think we're ready for that yet. And again, as in progression, I think if you're going to look at any other process, you should look at the RTM as the other option over open town meeting. That's my own personal opinion. Again, taking steps. I'm not comfortable with the council only because of you're putting 7 to 9 people in charge of everything, and you really don't have any control over it for a couple of years. If you don't like the way I'm voting today, you can't get me out for 2 years. I'm going to be sitting there for a couple of years. So it happens that way with the selectmen too, but we have other checks and balances where you have people that are able to make that decision for you. Like the finance committee makes a lot of recommendations. So just don't think we're ready for a town council at this point. And again, if you read one of their charters and just look at it objectively, you read it and say, well, okay, we still have to do this. We still have to have a budget process. We still have to have public hearings. We still have to have things before the 7 to 9 individuals make that final decision. So it still takes participation from the community, one way or the other.
Was there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to discuss?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's some if we could figure out a way to modify some of the ways we do business in town, I think there's ways that the town can save money and take that money and use it for other purposes. And it's something we've been working on, looking at for years, that haven't really done a good job of getting it the way it should be. But an example, even the highway department. Those guys are responsible for cemetery, highway, the streets, mowing the grass. You've got all this stuff going on. Then we have the school department that has their own equipment with their own outside services. Then we have engineering work being done through the water department, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, the board of selectmen, the building inspector, but we don't have a town engineer. You know, and you have to ask yourself, if we were to incorporate some of these agencies under one umbrella or two umbrellas, we had an engineer in charge of all of the various facets of the departments like the DPW and others, how much money could we save? We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in engineering, and most of it's paid for by outside applicants. We don't pay for it ourselves, a lot of it. So, you know, the water department definitely is triple digit every year. So, you know, maybe looking back at how we run the business is something we should talk about. You know, we tried a few times to get the water sewer commissioners appointed rather than elected. We tried. We've always had trouble filling the positions. But if that department were under the control of the town manager, not the board of selectmen, the town manager, and if he or she were the one making the appointment to that board instead of us electorate, they could get a more qualified person to run it and have a lot more control over how it works. Now, how many backhoes does he have? How many backhoes does the water department have? The school department has a backhoe. I mean, do we need all this equipment? If you would incorporate just the equipment and the manpower together under one person or one department, you could get a lot more done with a lot less equipment and maybe a lot less manpower. You know, that's just one example. But engineering is definitely something that should be looked at. IT, we're kidding ourselves. You know, those monitors sitting there behind me, I dragged those over from the Attleboro High School. They were getting rid of them. Shane gave me a call, said, we've got these monitors, you want them? Sure, they're better than what we have now. But the thing is, we have no one that can do it. We have an agency that comes in, you know, and they make minor repairs, but if you had an IT department for the entire town, not just for the town hall, it should be for both sides. And I believe school has hired someone now that does a lot of their internal IT work. The town still employs a part-time person 4 hours a week or something like that to come in and just fix the bugs as they're happening. Could save a lot of money, a lot of aggravation. But there's, you know, there's, again, looking at how we do business inside, before we start changing the way we govern ourselves, if we can look internally and figure out how these things work and how things can be modified even more so than they have been in the past, it makes a lot of sense to do so. You know, we're very frugal in this town. You know, we're getting furniture right now from the old Cisco building. They're reconverting some of the offices. I heard someone say the other day, oh, the town hall's getting new furniture. Yeah, they are. It's coming on the back of a truck from the DPW from the building down the street, and at no cost other than labor to the town. That's how we've been doing it for years. In fact, I just put in a request for Shane for a new chair. You know, see if we can get him one that swivels so he can get in and out of it without dragging himself across the floor. But if we could look at, if you could look at some of the internal mechanisms of how his department works in comparison to the water department, just the various, I mean, police department and fire department, they pretty much have their own gig. I mean, they have to follow certain rules and regulations. You've got communication down there that's going to be coming out very soon. That'll open up more space for the police department. They'll have more space available to them. The fire department screaming they need more space, and it's here, we're using it. It's from that wall back is what the building that should be here. From that wall forward should be gone. But that's the space that they could be utilizing on the other side of that corridor out there. If we ever get to the point where we can afford to build something new or take something else over. So there's, but if we could look at some of the opportunities we have to look within ourselves. You know, if we had the assessors upstairs, they're still elected. I don't know why. I really don't. You know, you can get three very qualified people to do that. They have 1 year to get certified once they are put into place. And you want someone who wants to volunteer. And believe it or not, people don't want to put their name on a ballot. They just don't want to do it. They're just people that could do a great job for us, but they just don't want to take the time or the effort to do it publicly, I guess would be the best way to put it. But you got to look at the highway bond, then you look down, if you take a walk to the water department building they've got down on John Scott, and then you go over and look at that building behind the COA building where the school department hides most of their stuff, but it's not all there. And then you got this guy plowing their driveways. I mean, they work somewhat together, but you've got unions you have to deal with too. If you had it all under one umbrella with one union, then you've got better control of it. Meaning that you can send people where you need them. If you need to go dig a school out, you send them over and dig out a school. If you need to move the grass at the cemetery, you move them over to the cemetery side. Have some flexibility. I think that's one area that we should really look at.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Kimball?
Question. So I think you kind of touched on a few of these things, but over the course of 24 years as selectman, do you think that the job of selectman has changed, or has it more been impacted by, like, the circumstances around you? Like, because you did this job for 24 years. Did your job as selectman change over the course
Mine
of
didn't.
No?
No, it didn't. What changed along the way was we made the town manager's position a bit stronger over the years. So that person took on more responsibility for the day-to-day stuff. We had, the selectmen were mostly policies and procedures, licensing. That's all we were there for. I have the last police commissioner badge. At one time, we were police commissioners. And I'm the last sitting selectman to actually get the badge. You can't have it back. But I have it. But I think, over the years, I've seen the town hall change, with responsibilities and title changes and that type of stuff. But no, I didn't see much of anything different happen for the selectmen, because the charter was fairly new at that time, and we were following the guidelines of the charter, so it didn't really change that much. The politics would change it, obviously, depending on which way the wind was blowing. Maybe people were sliding one way or the other, but no, I don't think it was that big of a change. I know there's a recent proposal to change it to select person. Select board, I fully endorse it. I think it's a good idea. I think it's time, the time has come. Whether or not it should have been on a special town meeting warrant article, when we have an elected charter commission, I don't know why they did that. I question that. There were 3 articles in the last special town meeting changing the charter. What are you guys doing? Board of Selectmen decided not to put together a committee, but yet they put 3 articles. They changed the article, the warrant. And what's going to happen with that, just so you're aware of it, depending on when you guys come up with your final report, you're going to have a choice of 2 ways. You can submit the whole project as one, or you can do it as a menu. Do it piece by piece. If we continue to take bites out of it and do it as one at a time, you're creating a menu selection. Because these articles that were changed at the last special town meeting, the 2 that were voted for, that need to go to ballot. They're going to go to a ballot. And it could be 2 separate questions on the ballot. Where you guys, when you're done, should have one document that you're going to submit and say, this is what we think we need to do. You may decide not to. You may decide to do a menu, where you say, Section 1 is about this. We want to, we support this, and then you go to Section 2, Section 3. Cemetery Commission was criticized at the last town meeting for not having copies of the document. Well, there were many reasons why it wasn't ready. When it did get ready, it was ready about 3 days before town meeting. When we finally got council back with all their recommendations, we had to retype the whole document, following their recommendations. Many people looked at it. No one was going to look at it anyway. But the point of the matter is, the document that we did create by our present charter should have been voted on by the Board of Selectmen at town meeting. And I immediately questioned why we were going to town meeting with a 20-page document on rules and regulations, policies. Why are we doing it? And we were told by town council, well, we think that's the way it should go. But our own charter states right in it that the Board of Selectmen can make that decision. They were the ones we prepared that for, that town meeting. We weren't planning on taking this whole 20-page document to town meeting. It wasn't our plan at all. We ended up doing it at the very last minute, because we did have a placeholder for it, and we took advantage of it. It passed. There's nothing controversial in it. Everything's Mass General law, but people wanted to see it, and I totally understand that. I sat there thinking to myself, they're going to shoot it down because they can't see it. But we won by 4 votes. We were expecting to come back to the next town meeting, and it actually passed. So I don't know if it's from feeling confident that we did our job, or if they just wanted to move it along. But I'm glad it's done, because now he has the rules and regs, and he has the ability to utilize that new. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the big hammer, but, he has the rules now that they can utilize to make it happen. Even the forms we were using were wrong. We were using deeds. There's no such thing as a deed anymore. I mean, everything we were using was so archaic that we had to go back and reinvent the whole process. But we did have the template, and it saved us a lot of time. But before we start changing our form of government, we should look internally and see if there's some changes we can make there first. Make it better. This new permitting process that we have, the building commissioner put together, Chris Carmichael, presently, he brought that to us. That's going to save us a world of trouble and a world of headaches. It's going to save a lot of money. It's going to make a lot of money for the town. So that's the kind of stuff that we have to get up in the 21st century and get out of the 1800s, and start doing things the right way, the best we can. I don't know if I had anything else really. There's obviously, in the charter, there are certain things you're going to have to change, like you refer to local newspaper. But I think you have to expand on that today, because newspapers are becoming a dying breed. And I think social media and all the other sites that we have available today have to be included in the new documents moving forward.
Mr. Peter Channel, I provide news in the town of Norton, Bob. Hey, Bob?
Yep, that's right. Any way we can get it out there, right, Peter?
Right, Bob. Right.
The town manager, I still believe, needs to have more responsibility and be given more abilities to appoint committees, certain committees and boards, take it away from the selectmen, because it's too political. And the town manager can interview and has the time to sit down, interview, and talk to people and find out what they're trying to do, and try to get it so that people can pick the best person for the job, aside from politics. Keep it straight and narrow, and this is what we need to do. If you look at the list that Mike Eunice presently appoints, there are a number on there that really the selectmen don't have to be involved in. Anytime they can reaffirm anything, they don't have to be involved in that selection. I think the town moderator is too strong a position. I think that position has to be modified. And I think one way to do that would be to use a few different ways of doing it. Would be the moderator is obviously elected position. And that, I agree that should stay the way it is. But perhaps we have 5 precincts. We have 5 people run by precinct to be appointed to the finance committee for 2 years, 3 years, whatever years you come up with. And then the other 4 positions, to make it a total of 9, should be by the elected boards. Would be the Board of Selectmen, could appoint one, school committee, planning board, and the moderator. Now you've got 9 people to serve. I just think it would be cleaner, and I think it would take the politics out of that position too. Because it's just, people that put their name on a ballot want to serve, and they want to be there for a reason. And you'd hope that at precinct 1, there wouldn't be just one name, there'd be 2 or 3 running. And there'd be some dialogue, some conversation about it. And I think that whole process needs to be changed. And I know there are towns that have an entire elected finance committee. not just some, but all are elected. So, when I first did it I went on in 1986. They were basically dragging anybody. They didn't care who you were. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone on the finance committee. I didn't know the town moderator. I didn't know anybody. Sent a letter, and now I was put on. I'm glad they did that, but there's a lot to be said about how that process is working today. I don't think it's working as well as it should be. We have a Norton District Commission, Keith and I have become very fond of, and we have the Norton Historical Commission. And people always ask, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference, but they should be one. They should be they should be under one grouping. The Historic Commission takes care of our history. They take care of the old schoolhouse. They take care of anything that has historic. The Historic District Commission controls what's within that district, which is West Main Street, down to Pine Street, Cemetery, down Elm Street, back up this way. There's a district. We've had to work with them to do the town common. And I'll tell you, they're tough to work with. But they want it historical, and that's what they want to have it. So one suggestion I would have would be to combine the two, because both committees right now are full. And the members that are there have been on there a long time, and at some point they're going to get off. So we need to start looking at that and see if that's something. The assessors, the same thing. We should be appointing to the assessors, not electing them.
Anybody have anything else for Mr. Kimball?
Anybody? No. Come on, you got to give me something.
You did such a great job.
I think you guys are doing a great job, and I know it's a lot of work. Been here and done this myself over the years, where you work hard, and I know there's been some histories of, making some changes. We have made a few changes to the charter. We have over the years. It's when you come with a big block of stuff, you throw it all at one time. You're going to have to do a lot of educating to get people on your side. There was one charter change that went down in smoke from the very beginning because the minutes weren't taken. Remember that one? They blamed the selectmen for it. But we had the town meeting, and there were no recorded minutes. The charter was already in place. So that's why it went down smoking, not because the selectmen weren't supportive of it. Because as I recall, I was supportive of the changes they were trying to make. But there's nothing more frustrating to get all your work done, get everything over there, and you're ready to go, and then you find out some stupid little minute, rule that you didn't follow. So I would encourage you to make sure you have your I's dotted and your T's crossed before you bring it back. And have as many hearings as you can. Talk about it. So people can say, I didn't know that, I didn't know this. Talk them to death. Make sure they understand what the changes are going to be. And your reason for it. And see what happens.
Mr. Kimball, I appreciate you coming in.
Okay,
Thank you very much for the service
Yeah,
you've
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, thank you for your service that you've done at the town, volunteering multiple.
Been my
functions
pleasure.
on.
It really has. I've enjoyed serving the town. I'm retired. And not to say I'm not going to be around. I mean, I'm still going to be involved, but, as some of my commissions come up, I probably won't reassign, re-up for them. The Gold Star is very near and dear to me. I'll stay on that one. But the other ones I probably will eventually. The town common was just designed to take care of getting that common restored. And once that's done, I'll ask the Board of Selectmen to disband it, so that won't even be in here. That's not in here now, and it won't be in here. But I've really enjoyed serving the community. I've always enjoyed knowing what's going on and being involved. I see a lot of things around town I'm very proud of, that I know I was a part of, and I'm happy for that. My wife and I are both retired now, so we have time to do what we want to do. Yeah. What time are you there tomorrow morning? She used to say, can't you go find something to do? But I think I've really enjoyed my years of service. And I took some time off in the early 90s between FinCom getting back. I was running my own business, actually, so I had to spend some time on that. And then once I got off that, I was glad to be able to come back in '95. And Bill Gavere and I ran together first time. And we had to get control of that board because it was embarrassing. It really was, the way the town was being run in those days. But fortunately, we've had some very professional managers that have been able to help us. So, but I thank you all for your hard work. Keep it up. I know you're going to do a good job. And when you're planning on having the final documents ready to go, any idea?
To be by October, we have to have it
Due
submitted.
October of next year.
Shooting for next October?
Well, that says it has to be submitted.
So after
we'll have some-
October, you'll either have to have a special election.
We'll have to have some meetings too with the public, some information meetings.
Yeah.
So it'll be a long process, but
Once the town meeting approves it, then you're going to go to the ballot. And you could either call for a special, or you can wait until April, one or the other. Okay, well, thanks so much.
Thank you very much
for coming in.
Kimball.
Involved? You want to get involved? You want to get? I think so.
So next up on the agenda was Mr. Bob Salvo for the Norton Housing Authority. Mr. Salvo was going to reschedule with us. He wasn't feeling well tonight. The last one is going to be the Water Bodies Committee. Mr. Lennon?
Yeah, how we doing?
Good, how are you? Thanks for coming in.
See any of my other committee members here, so it looks like it's me.
Appreciate you coming in.
Sure.
Can you just introduce yourself and explain a little bit what you do and what
Yeah,
your
Dave
committee is?
Lennon, 90 Maple Street. I've been in town, since 91. I run Norton Kayak Company, and I was asked, a bunch of years ago by town manager Mike Units if I'd be interested in chairing the Water Bodies Committee, and the goal of the committee was to look into the invasive aquatic plant problem on the town's 4 water bodies. So Lake Winnicott, Norton Reservoir, Chartley Pond, and Barrowsville. And Lake Winnicott for years had been a mess with the invasive aquatic plants, non-native plants. So milfoil and fanwort were 2 of the big invasives over there. And that pretty much spread. Every pond in town had its issues. And for about the first year, we gathered a good committee of folks from around the ponds. Our committee now has folks from, I think, all 4 ponds on it, which is great. So
How many members?
7, I think. And there's supposed to be a Conservation Commission member, but I think one had that. So there's supposed to be a standing member of Conservation on our committee. Like I said, no one was ever able to commit time from Conservation to regularly attend our meeting, so.
And who appoints you?
Select Board.
And how long has this commission been formed?
Oh, boy, I'm not good with numbers, but it's been, 2019? Peter, you got that info?
About around 90.
2014, maybe,
2014,
2013? So,
What are your thoughts on the level of guidance and support you receive from the town?
good, well, it was kind of not having that standing member of Conservation all the time wasn't good, but, Jen, our conservation agent, was always there to answer any questions that we had, so. And was a wealth of information, in the beginning process, because a lot of us really weren't experienced in the field, so to speak. So to be able to go out in the field and identify the problem and which plants were the problem and which ones weren't the problem, took us a little bit, but with guidance from Department of Conservation and Recreation and Conservation in town, we were able to educate the board, the committee that we formed, and come up with a plan, and formed an article and put that at town meeting, and we got funding, and we've had great success with the project, so.
Do you have access to everything, for instance, information technology, the people you need to function properly?
I would say, yeah, with the internet, everything is, the information is out there. The consultant that the town hired, and also Solitude Lake Management, put together annual reports and surveys, and it's all out there, for every resident to look at. And we've gathered lots of hard physical evidence in our big file cabinet upstairs that's open to everybody to look at too, so. We try to be as open and transparent as we can, because, with the age of Facebook and the questions that come, and we have a Facebook page set up for anyone who has questions and stuff, so.
Can you just briefly explain what this, the contract you guys have now with the invasive aquatic, how that works?
Where we're at with the
Yeah.
project, we're going into our third year, coming up a treatment.
Is it 3 or 5?
Yes, the funding we had, we were hoping that would last 3 to 5 years. We still have, I'm not sure the exact figure, I think it's 200,000 plus. We've had great success at all the ponds, really, and we've had, there's been variables that have kind of changed the plan a little bit. Chartley Pond, we went through the dam repair, which drew the lake down last year, so no treatment. But we were able to do a cleanup around the lake, so you take the opportunity for tack another project onto one when the opportunity arises. So that's, we didn't get treatment that year, but, surveys, and there's still funding, for treatment next year. Reservoir, we've had great success. Lake Winnicott is unbelievable if you know anyone who lives over there. Folks over there are very happy. And they've also, they provide all the surveys and information are up on the websites and stuff. I think they've been very impressed with the consultant that we have. Great lines of communication, information is provided, so.
Can I ask a question? Does the board have any say on the consultant that you use, or does the?
Everything was done with an RFQ and an RFP, so it wasn't like our committee, we didn't have any hiring control or anything like that. So it all went through the select board and town manager with requests for qualifications and proposals and all that stuff, so.
And you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, I come from the private sector, so it was a little slow for me, to say the least. It is what it is, that's the way the state has set up the rules for big projects like this, and I think it provides accountability and where the money was going once we got it, and how it was spent, and that it was being spent the right way. And in a town that is pretty tight with its funding, we got the money with very little resistance, I think. We had a good plan. We presented it well, and I think everyone was on board with it, so.
Have you noted any trends or changes to regulations in your subject area that will see potentially impacting as we go forward?
Well, I think, all the stormwater stuff that all the towns got to get caught up on, and the state's mandating is going to help the water bodies in town. When we don't have storm drains going into the stream that goes into the lake, that's huge. And as all that stuff gets done, that's less phosphorus and nitrogen in the water, which causes the invasive plants to grow much quicker. So hopefully the problem won't go away. It's always going to be an issue with maintenance. And funding will be an issue in the future too. There's going to be a point where the budget we have allotted will, be used.
Have you worked with or come across any other towns where your function is structured differently?
A lot of the town, every town's got pretty much a conservation commission that oversees all the wetland bylaws and state laws and stuff like that. A lot of towns do have committees that kind of do projects and stuff, and so I don't think that I think the authority is with and should be with conservation. I don't think our committee needs any authority. I don't know. I think another authoritative board isn't necessary in this case. I think the town and our conservation agent do a great job with the resources they have, so.
Either as a member of the committee or a member of the town, what do you think that, as we operate, that we should start doing, town government-wise?
Being more transparent, which I think has happened in the recent past. I think the internet and the town websites and everything enables residents to get the information if they want it.
What are some of the things that we do that we should continue to do?
Educate the public awareness, getting the word out. It's, one of the things the committee did when we do in conjunction, we try to co-op with Wheaton College when we do the reservoir cleanup every year, and, there's always people like, "Whoa, how come you didn't tell us about this? Why are you saying something after the fact?" Or, well, there are people that want to know and people that kind of want to know and the people that want to get involved, but getting the information out to people that want to volunteer or be part of any of the committees or commissions in town that help things work more efficiently. Coming from the private sector, efficiency is key, and some things aren't efficient in this town, and it's pretty frustrating sometimes. So Keith can attest to that, because there's just not enough funding to go around for everything, and got to prioritize stuff. And how do you prioritize it? Whose priority is it? Keith's priorities on some stuff are different than selectman or town manager, or and when there's not enough money in the budget, I can see how that can cause conflict amongst committees, boards, whatever, because every committee, every board needs to function and have some type of working relationship with other ones, for everything to work. And sometimes there's so much going on, stuff gets lost in the shuffle. I know we've been trying to get signage on the reservoir and down on Juniper Lane, and I sat in front of the selectmen 5 different times over 6 years, and each time they said, "We're gonna get this done." And is it still done as of today? Getting there. I don't know. Waiting for another update, but it's frustrating because that's something that impacts the safety of people who use that lake. And now that the lake is cleaned up, the usage has gone way up. We redid all the water body bylaws because we knew that there was going to be this increased usage, and it's frustrating not to have the signage that every town that has a big body of water has, so.
As it relates to the town government, what are some things that we should stop doing?
Elections for positions that should be appointed, which I hear a lot about, I'm not sure what positions are left. I know the select board, obviously, and stuff like that, but I can remember a town clerk election years back where, if you had the most purple signs, you won, and whether you were qualified or not, and that was a pretty high-paying job for someone who wasn't qualified to win that election. Stuff like that can't happen, I don't think. You know, let's have the right people, the most qualified people, and have a process to appoint those people, you know? And I think the select board does a decent job at that, you know?
Was there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to discuss?
No, you know, just efficiency, I think, is something that can always get better. Now, sometimes efficiency comes with more staff, more funding, you know. And I think, you know, meetings are being, you know, public notices, public information meetings. I think, you know, an example, the rail trail. Great, right? A lot of support, a lot of public information sessions that gathered that support. So, you know, projects, and I think our water bodies committee did well getting the information out, what was going on with the ponds and the solution and how to address it and stuff, so.
Anyone else have anything for Mr.
And I
Lyon?
think that's gotten better in the past few years, you know, I guess with the advent of the, you know, the websites and all the information that can be put up kind of pretty quickly and for everybody to look at, you know, as opposed to, you know, public notices in the newspaper or something like that, you know, so.
So I just had a question about you. I think you kind of answered it. You said this is an ongoing issue with maintenance. So do you see your committee staying around? Like it's not a temporary?
Well, you know, our task was the invasive plant issue. We've kind of been proactive and taken on some projects. We're very active with some of the Eagle Scouts that have put kiosks up on all the public access points. Lake Winnicott, we got one at the dam, we have one at Juniper Beach. We have an Eagle Scout project that was just approved for an Osprey Tower on the Norton Reservoir, which is gonna be phenomenal. So, but, I'm sorry, did I answer you?
Yeah, the only reason I was asking is because you're not currently listed in the charter. I think it was because you formed after maybe the updates were made.
Yeah, like I said,
Like,
we've,
would you want to be included, I guess, in that charter to, mentioned as one of the committees appointed by Board of Selectmen?
yeah, I think, once the invasive plant problem is solved, we're gonna obviously need continued maintenance and monitoring over the years, but to have a committee that can observe, maintain, help maintain, because it's a huge reservoir. Lake Winnicott is big, Barrowsville, Chartley, they all have their own issues, usages and stuff, and I think the committee would be useful going forward in doing different projects and raising awareness, et cetera. You gotta have eyes and ears out there. You know, Jen and the Conservation Commission and Highway, they can't be everywhere and do everything, you know? So, and I think our committee is, other than the tasks that we were formed to do, I think we've come up with other projects and found useful things to do within the community.
Anything else?
Mr. Lennon, appreciate you coming in.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much
Keep
for your
up the good
time.
work, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Next on the agenda is the acceptance of the prior meeting minutes. Before we review I just want to make a motion that, since we're getting these sometimes up to a day or two prior to the meetings from Sandy, I think if we can just maybe, after obviously tonight, we can maybe take a vote to just accept them as they're written. Does anyone have a scene objection to that instead of all of us kind of staring at each other and letting them read for 10 minutes? That's not, I just think for ease of that meetings going forward, if we're getting them a day or two before and we're all reading them, I don't think we need to sit and, you know, watch each other read for the next 5 minutes. Obviously, Laura's not here, so we can start with the next meeting, but,
Yeah.
so for this one, we'll give her a few minutes for, to at least review.
Sign what, this?
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of Tuesday, October 22nd.
A motion to accept the meeting minutes of October 22nd?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
No abstain.
Okay.
Maybe.
So administrative items. Sandy, do you want to go over the upcoming interview schedule and any updates?
I think we talked about it last time, I just put it in the updated schedule that planning board is coming the 18th. And then, I added in here cultural council on December 16th. Historic District Commission, I'm still kind of waiting to hear back. I tried to get the 16th, but, they were busy that night, so we might have to add another one on December 2nd. Be a busy night.
And we'll try to reschedule Mr. Salvo for
Yes.
somewhere mixed
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, do we have a preference for, are we okay waiting until December 16th, because we have some openings, or do we want to get them in before then?
So the 16th might be the lighter
Yeah.
on the schedule and the other ones on. We already have 5 on the second, 4 on the 18th.
So we're meeting here Thursday with MMA and Town Council. And then our meeting on the 18th will be held at the Public Library. How's that? Anything else on the interview schedule? From anybody? So the next part of the agenda is going to be a vote on the remote participation. Seeing that Laura is not here and we all need to sign it anyway, I would make a motion to table this vote until Thursday, the 7th.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
So that would be tabled for the 7th for that. So I know last time we spoke about the information gathering and research that we were all going to do. Does anybody have anything to add for additional information needed by us?
I'll just provide an update on the things that I was collecting, which were how many unopposed elections in the last 5 years, I think, and the numbers of attendance for town meetings. I still haven't received the information. Lucia's been busy, so she might be a little bit lagged on it, but I'll prod her again like in a week or so, just as a reminder. But it was asked for right after that meeting, just she's been busy.
Plus, I post articles from the past on Facebook so people can see,
Thanks, Peter.
right?
Yep.
Right? Any-
The only update I have is I was going to speak to the town manager about MX Consulting. They are the company that does some of the IT. He had forwarded me some of the costs for fiscal year '20. So they have what they call MSP Goal Remote Monitoring, Field Service Maintenance, Scheduled Services for a total of $66,860, what we pay to MX Consulting. This does not include any agreements and record storage required by the state. This is a service only. I'm working on what we pay for those couple things. So we're looking in, as of right now, $66,860 as a total of what we pay MS Consulting.
And that's what, year-to-date of 2019 or
Fiscal year '20.
fiscal year 20?
That's what we're gonna be paying MX Consulting. That's directly from the town manager. I believe they are 8 hours a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Plus there's some monitoring, field service maintenance and scheduled services. So I'm gonna speak to the town manager about also what the agreements and the storage required by the state, which is obviously state law, which we're not getting out of that. So that's my update on the MX Consulting portion of it. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about so Laura had asked me to look into representative town meeting and kind of some of the other towns and how they're making out with that, I guess you could say. So I reached out to Walpole, and they gave me a lot of good information. I haven't really gone through it and sorted it, but they do have a lot of data there. Looking at it really quickly, I would say, at least recently, it seems to be, they have a pretty high participation rate, so, very few appointed positions. There seems to be contested races for the most part. So that was kind of that was me just gleaming that data. And then I spoke to Paul Munchbash over at Dedham. So that was a very interesting conversation. So it turns out that Dedham has had a representative town meeting for at least 60 years. So he's been there 30 years, and so he's seen it all. And so a very interesting guy to talk to. He talked a lot about, kind of like Mr. Kimball kind of alluded to too, is it kind of goes through cycles. When there's hot topics in town, there's a lot of people running, and you get contested races, and, you could call it, special interest, or, there's an interest. They're building a new school. You mentioned the last 5 to 8 years, they built a new town hall, 2 new schools, a rail trail. So that's really kept people engaged. And prior to that, there was actually talk in the town of Dedham of going to more of a town council, but then these issues came up, and now participation has kind of gone up. So as he put it, it tends to be issue-driven participation. In other years, you're lucky to get this. They have 13. I guess they have 13 representatives, I guess, from each precinct. And he said, some years you're lucky you can get 13. So it's kind of up and down. It's kind of the gist of it. But he did say that, as far as average attendance at town meetings, he knew this right off the top of his head, 88%. 240 out of 273 members show up on average. That was about it. He did offer, he gave me all this off the top of his head. He was a very, very intelligent, very informed gentleman. He is going to go back and kind of pull some data for me so I can actually have some, some stats. And he was more than willing to do that, but I haven't got that yet from him. And he was also, if any questions come up going forward, he was more than open to, me reaching back out there. So I have to say both towns, just like our town, the town clerk is very accessible and more than willing to talk to you. So that's kind of where I am staying right now. So I'm kind of waiting to get Paul's information, and I'm going to kind of, depending on how his looks and how he puts it together. Because we didn't really talk about how it's going to come in, because he didn't seem to have, the information is there, but it's not like electronically anywhere apparently. And then once I get his, I'll kind of mirror Walpole's, I think. How I present Walpole's will be similar probably how Paul does his, so I'm doing apples to apples, but it's my general thought. So. And maybe I'll reach out to one more town. I haven't really decided yet. But. So that's where I am in that.
Did you say 88% participation in town meetings? That's as,
Representative.
The representative.
with the RTM?
Yeah.
And they have 230 members?
273.
273, wow.
Yeah, I didn't do the math, but I think there's 7 precincts. Yeah, so it's 7 precincts, 39 representatives per precinct. So if you do that math, I believe you'll get 273. And then each one of them, then it's 30, in each, it's 30, so if you divide 39 divided by 3 is 13 per year. So what they do is they have everyone's on a 3-year cycle, but it's staggered.
That seems much larger than the ones we've read, right? I don't remember any that were like 39 from each precinct.
No, I think
Some of them are
I
pretty
think there was
big.
it was
Some of them
similar.
are pretty, some of them
Yeah.
couldn't be filled either.
It
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be like a big number,
Yeah.
when you think about getting that many to
Yeah.
run.
I feel like we talked about getting, that's what you just said, how do you get that many people to?
And that was,
run
but
for
Dedham's
those
pretty big,
seats?
right? How many people live in, how many voters do they have?
It's a little bigger than Dedham. I mean, I think they were like 23, 24,000.
Okay. It's not that much bigger.
That much bigger.
No, it wasn't, surprisingly. It's a much more congested town,
Yeah.
so it's not a much smaller area, and, you know. When you live in, I used to live in Dedham myself, and I was shocked when he told me that number. I thought he was gonna say 40,000, just based on my experience, but
It does seem like a
yeah, it's much more congested,
though.
so. Yeah, but it's been, you know, as he said, it's been, he goes, as long as, he goes, I think he's 60 years plus, so he didn't even know when it goes back to, but it's been that for a long, long time.
For DPW, I'm gonna wait and see what we can get from the Foxborough town manager, who's coming Thursday, and then see what questions maybe they still have. And then I might reach out to Plainville and see, because they recently switched over to the DPW.
And I was looking at the appointment of finance committees in surrounding areas and under different forms of government. And I'm not ready to give an update yet.
Anybody else?
I had no action items.
Nor did I.
Does anyone have any other topics they'd like to discuss? So next meeting is this Thursday. We have the MMA, Formal Government Committee, Foxborough Town Manager, and the Bridgewater Town Manager. Just so everybody knows, or if they haven't, Lauren's putting together a list of questions that we have for town council, and if we have anything for the two town managers. Obviously, I think some of it's gonna be on the fly as we're speaking to them, but if you have anything, just make sure you get that to her so she can form it up and get it out to us. Ms. Goldberg will be here as well, so I know we talked about it before. I have a few questions, but we had multiple questions. I believe Laura's already formulated a pretty good list.
Is the list on the, not SharePoint, what we use?
Dropbox.
Dropbox, only because I don't want to ask questions that have probably already been asked.
I believe she put it on Dropbox, the initial one that was started,
Okay.
if I remember right. So
If not, if you send them to Laura, she can
she can update it too, so.
merge them all.
Yeah, but I think I know what she's saying. You don't want to send duplicates of the same.
Well, I don't want to spend 30 minutes thinking about questions when everything that I probably have questions about is probably already there.
Yeah, some of the ones that I had forwarded to her were already on the list, but it was more just that, I think they were important things to be brought up, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of us are gonna have the same questions,
Right.
so hopefully we can get
Probably.
most of them answered, but I think some of them might come up as the meeting goes along, you know what I mean? Last time she was a huge help for us, and that was our first meeting. I can only imagine what she could be for this meeting.
So all our questions are going through Laura?
No, I wouldn't say that, I would just think we want to have a good idea of a list that we can ask her. Ms. Goldberg kind of requested that she could see what we were looking for, so she made sure she had the knowledge for us.
Okay, so it's
So
going to.
kind of preempt the,
Okay,
you know,
right.
so we didn't come here, and she wasn't blindsided with questions that she didn't know answers to. Basically to help us out as best she can. I think that's why the questions were asked beforehand, but I'm sure there's going to be questions that, you know, kind of stumble off those, if anyone has them.
Yeah, I sent Laura a list. If you recall the last meeting, I kind of rattled off those my written notes here. And it seemed to cover, you know, some general questions that people had, so I just put it into a Word document and sent it over to her. But they're very general. But I think it's,
It's the stage we're at.
what's that?
It's the stage we're at.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a stage we're at, and I think the attorney didn't want to she just wanted to have a general idea, I think, where we were coming from, so.
But we're sending it to Laura and she's putting one together to send to her.
Yeah, so I think,
That's my understanding.
so some of the stuff we had, some of the topics were, just to name a few, just so everyone kind of knows that what was out there, was the powers of the town and corporation, scope of power, form of government, some questions on the legislative branch, executive branch, elected town officers / boards, questions about the town manager and the roles, administrative organization, departments, and appointment of town boards, financial / fiscal policies and procedures,
Yeah.
the elections, citizen participation, general provisions, and transition provisions. So it's pretty much stuff we've all discussed in the prior meetings. It's just kind of giving them to her beforehand so she can kind of get us an idea.
So we
Yeah.
add anything to this, is what you're saying?
If you'd like to, you can
Okay.
send it over to,
Yeah, that's part of what, because I saw the list and like, basically the questions that I would have are are under one of those topics that's already listed on there, so
I think that's what, I think she was just giving us organizers though, right? So if you have questions, you know,
Oh, I see, specific.
put them under, yeah, under these categories, so that when we start asking our questions, we're sort of not all over the place.
Okay,
I think this was more of an organizer.
gotcha. Okay.
Any action items?
Just what you just said, if anyone has questions for Lauren, send to Laura.
Okay.
I think that's it. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn?
All right, meeting adjourned.
A second?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Hi Denise.
Aye.